Well, hello and welcome to CBN News live coverage. We've got an exclusive here. CBN's George Thomas is reporting live from southern Lebanon. This is a very dangerous area here. George, glad you're here. Tell us where you are now and what's going on.
Yeah, I will tell you that since this, what you would call it, a war that Israel and Hezbollah have been engaged in ever since October 7th, since the start of the when Hamas went on this horrific attack in Israel back on October 7th. Israel and Hezbollah have engaged over the last 5 months, guys, on almost daily skirmishes right behind me. So let me set the scene of where I am. We are coming to you live from South Lebanon. In this direction is the Israeli town of Metula. It is pretty much about a 10-minute drive. So in this direction is the Israeli border, about 10 minutes away. Right behind me is a Hezbollah stronghold called Al-Qaim, which is right behind me. And then this is the village of Kiala, and it's a predominantly Christian village. Pretty much the entire, in fact, one resident of South Lebanon, in essence, called this the playground for Hezbollah. And over the last probably week and a half, the Israelis have been targeting this area of South Lebanon. They've been hitting them pretty hard. And again, from my distance, from where I'm standing to this village is what, maybe about 5-minute drive, literally about 5-minute drive. I mean, the only thing that, in essence, separates the region is just, just a valley, in essence, right? But today, last night has been unusually quiet. Why? Because there's a lot of cloud cover. Sorry, I just losing my stuff here. It's pretty windy. The last couple of days, it's been blue skies, sunshine. Yesterday, it was overcast, and all today, it's been heavy fog. So in essence, we haven't heard anything. I slept pretty much, sound asleep last night. Did not hear anything, but it has been constant in this region. And so the weather has not helped at all, obviously, for the Israelis. For those living on this side, like myself and others, obviously it was a quiet night, and we're very thankful for that. But in this direction is a very famous landmark. It's called the Litani River. And what the Israelis have been saying for quite some time, since October 7th, they have been saying, listen, we have hundreds of thousands of Israelis who have been forced to evacuate from northern Israel because of the shelling that happens from here, that Hezbollah launches into Metula, into the northern cities of Israel. And so we need to push Hezbollah from here all the way to the Litani River, which is about 15 kilometers, and get them across on the other side of the river, create this buffer zone. When you create this buffer zone, Israel says it then becomes safe for them to bring all of their Israelis who have been, in essence, displaced and internally displaced. They can bring them back home to the northern parts of Israel. So that right there, guys, is kind of like what I'm painting for you today, and where I am, and the situation on the ground as we speak here in South Lebanon.
So we got George Thomas here, is joining us now. People coming in here as we've gone live, and they'll start to join the chat as we go on here. George Thomas from CBN, we got an exclusive here. There are basically no journalists in southern Lebanon where George is at right now, giving us a look that's looking back towards Israel inside of Hezbollah strongholds. George, you've drove around there, and this is where Hezbollah is operating from. I mean, first of all, talk about what you've seen, but also how dangerous is it there for, an American journalist here? What is the does Hezbollah sort of hide in the shadows, or what is it like over there?
I mean, it's not like Hezbollah walks around the streets of southern Lebanon wearing. They basically live in their homes. Right, regular homes, but they have their rifles, they have their Katyusha rockets pretty much under their beds, in their living room, I mean, this is where they live, right? This is, in essence, where they live and have been living for many, many years. So what the Israelis have been doing, according to the IDF statistics, they estimate that they have managed since October 7th to kill about 150 Hezbollah operatives, including 5 high-ranking top Hezbollah commanders. And since October 7th, the reporting is that the IDF have targeted roughly about 110, 120 Hezbollah outposts that line the South Lebanon border with Israel. They've gone after a couple of sites where Hezbollah has launched their rockets from, a number of operational centers, command centers here in the south of the country. It's extremely, extremely dangerous, as you can imagine. But again, the Israelis have been going after various targets, various areas of South Lebanon. Once Hezbollah decides to launch their rockets, obviously, today we heard, probably drone activity for about an hour, hour and a half. It's a routine. In fact, the folks I've been talking to here on the ground, I just got in recently, they say every night the Israeli drones are operating full force, in essence, canvassing the land here in South Lebanon. But the thing is, it's eerily quiet. It really is, and number of places have seen multiple mortar as well as missile attack. Again, this area is a very strong Hezbollah stronghold close to Metula. Now, this area that I'm in is relatively safe so far because it's all Christian, a very small, beautiful community, but again, very historical in the sense that people have lived here for many, many years. I know people that I've met here have lived here for 60 plus years. It's beautiful. There are vineyards. There's olive farms, oranges, avocado. What's interesting is that in some of these valleys, farmland that's owned by Christians, they haven't had a chance in the last couple of weeks to go out and pick their crops. For example, the avocados. There are some avocados. Today Lebanon is a main exporter of avocados to Spain and other European countries. And so Christian farmers, haven't had a chance to go out into their fields and to harvest those avocados, to pick those avocados. Why? Because Israeli forces have been identifying people walking into these farmland area, and especially in this particular area, this is a farmland area that Christians have their various, whether it's olive gardens, wine, grapes, avocados, and other fruits. And so they haven't had a chance to go out because the Israelis have been targeting them, because again, the Israelis don't know who is approaching the Metula and the Israeli borderline, right? So there's been an agreement in the last couple of days, the IDF realizing that Christian farmers have got to continue their livelihoods, figure out how to go on with their life. And they've made these time slots, like from 6 o'clock in the morning to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can go out into your farm and you can do what you need to do. But the Christians I've spoken to here who own farm, they says, we're not risking that. We're not going to go out and do that. And in the process, there has been some who have taken advantage of this and gone out and stolen various fruits and other avocados and so forth. So that's been a big problem. Again, everything has come to a standstill since October 7th. Most of the focus has been on Israel, on Hamas, the Gaza Strip. But life here in South Lebanon, guys, has basically come to a standstill since October 7th. I mean, it's a ghost town. Their shops are rarely open, and they are very, very few hours. One person I talked to yesterday who has his own business, he has a carpentry business. He basically has not earned income since October 7th. So these small communities, these small villages here in the South, life has basically come to a standstill.
All right, we're talking to George Thomas here. CBN's George Thomas is in southern Lebanon, which is a Hezbollah stronghold right near where he's at, and he's been around those all day. You're not finding really any other reporters over in this area, so this is an exclusive look and information you're getting here from George Thomas in a very, very dangerous area. And so I see more people are joining the chat as we continue to go on and joining the live stream. So if you want to have a question for George, just go ahead and put it in the chat. We're monitoring that. We'll take a look at that. So George, you're right there. I mean, Israel, I guess, is like you were showing, is right off, not far from you in the background. This is probably the farthest, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in recent history that Israel has fought back into bordering nations like Lebanon. And so it's ramped up. Are people expecting this to continue to ramp up and into a full-scale war against Hezbollah as well, knowing that they're essentially an Iranian proxy?
Yeah, that is a big concern here for the residents of South Lebanon. But folks, again, I've been just talking to people, sitting down, having some coffee, having some baklava and other delicious South Lebanese food, and just trying to understand, what are you going through? What have you been experiencing? And the thing that I keep hearing from everyone is this sense of hopelessness, right? Because you may be coming into this conflict and you're maybe seeing the situation with Hamas and Israel, and you think this is a new conflict, and then you see that Israel there's engaged in these daily border skirmishes with Hezbollah, and you're wondering, okay, South Lebanon, what's going on? Why is George down in South Lebanon? Look, South Lebanon has been in a state of war since 1975. Just let that sink in for a moment. For 50 years, this region has experienced some semblance of war. Maybe for a year, 2 years, 3 years, there is calm, but then again, it goes into war. They've been under constant war footing for the last 50 years. It was the Palestinians, the revolution with the Palestinians back in 1975. Then Hezbollah came in 5 years later in 1980. They've been in war since 1980. Then obviously the Israelis came in, occupied this part of South Lebanon, and many people I've spoken to, about the role that Israel played when they occupied South Lebanon. They said it was a thriving community. There was freedom. Businesses were thriving. People were making a lot of money. The farms were full. There was peace. And then obviously the Israelis decided to pull out in 2006. And then Hezbollah moved in. And now you are again at war. And so people are wondering, I was talking to somebody today just before we came on. I said, do you have hope? Actually, I asked him, guys, do you dream? He's like, no, we don't dream anymore. We stopped dreaming 50 years ago. We don't dream. So just imagine, the communities like this one, Christian communities, where many of the young people have left because there's no life. What life is there, right? You're surrounded by Hezbollah. You're surrounded by this ideology that in essence treats you as a Christian, as a second-class citizen, and what life is there? And so many young people have left. Christians have left. This used to be a predominantly Christian area. The south of Lebanon was predominantly a Christian area. Now, very, very little. I think the estimates are 20 to 30% are Christian, and so many of them tend to be the older generation who have lived here, from the 60s, and this is their home. So South Lebanon has been under this constant state of war, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, again. Here we go again. In fact, the highest Christian leader in South Lebanon, he's a patriarch. He's the patriarch of the Maronite Christian denomination, the most high-ranking Christian leader. He went to a forum not too long ago, a couple of days ago, and in essence challenged Hezbollah and said to them, look, you guys are operating in the South, in our neighborhoods, in our community. Did you ask us, Christians, whether we want to be in a war with Israel? We don't agree with this war. So just imagine, you've got the highest ranking Lebanese Christian leader who is confronting Hezbollah head on and saying, we didn't ask for this. We don't want war. We want peace. Look at our state. Keep in mind, a couple of years ago, we saw the horrific explosion at the port in Beirut. And this was right before the entire country was going through economic crisis. Then this huge explosion takes place, and then the recovery and the devaluation of their currency, and how people lost so much of their Lebanese pounds from their banks, and all the corruption that was taking place. So this country Lebanon used to be called the Paris of the Middle East. It was a beautiful country. The cedars of Lebanon, the hills of Lebanon, so beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You can't see it right now, but right behind me is the biblical Mount Hermon. It's right there. And in fact, just a couple of days ago, there was snow. It was snow-capped Mount Hermon. And so, there's so many beautiful areas of the city, of this country. And today it's in the middle of this economic crisis, political chaos. They have had no president for the last 2 years. Their country, they're at a standstill. And now there's war. And this Maronite priest, in essence, said, look, we don't want this. We don't want this. And obviously Hezbollah responded to him and says, we don't care. We're not going to ask you permission whether we're going to engage in war against the Zionists. And so the folks I've spoken to here, they just say, look, we want peace, and we don't want this. We want some sense of normalcy, that we can go back to what life used to be like and find a way to live with each other in harmony. So, wow, I mean, it's unbelievable to just imagine what these folks are experiencing day in and day out for the last 50 years.
Wow, incredible stuff. All right, we're talking to CBN's George Thomas. If you're just joining us here on the stream, he is live in southern Lebanon, and just an incredible location. George, I hope you're staying safe out there. I mean, it's a dangerous zone. Like you said there's not many other journalists that have gone into this area. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's not a friendly territory.
Are you actually, George, are you actually in an area? I mean, I know you said you're kind of in that Christian enclave there, but are you near an area where, like, when Israel, like, let's say Hezbollah fires off something and then Israel fires back, are you sort of in that zone where they're firing back?
Yeah, right there. That valley, you see that valley right there. My cameraman, Mr. Abdullah, is pointing that direction. That beautiful valley right there. Israel has targeted a number of those homes. Why? Because at different times of the day, Hezbollah will just come out and launch a rocket, and then obviously the Israelis will retaliate. But I mean, we're talking what, 5 minutes, Abdullah? 5 minutes to drive to that location. So yeah, I mean, this whole area down here that you've got the camera pointing to, and then obviously down to this direction, Metula. If you look at a map, this is the northeastern quadrant of Israel. A town called Metula. It's in Israel, but in this direction is Metula. But the Israelis have been hitting other targets in the region close to the Mediterranean. Again, if you were to look, Lebanon has this beautiful coastline. Absolutely, I drove it coming from Beirut. Absolutely breathtaking, coastline all the way down to Israel. Obviously, Israel has that same coastline, the Mediterranean. So the Israelis have been targeting from the coastline of the Mediterranean, and then along the South Lebanon border, the Israeli border, and then coming up to where we are, right, to this location, and then all the way through Metula. That whole area, it's almost like an L shape. And they've been hitting in this region right behind me, and then along the coast down to Metula as well. Again, trying to stop fighters from coming in from Beirut, trying to intercept some of their weapons and some of the other military arsenal that they bring into this region, and in order to fire them off. The other thing that's also very interesting, guys, is that in some of these Christian enclaves, right, they don't necessarily have, I mean, they do have sort of like a local civilian police force that patrols the villages. We're not talking a town. These are villages. These are small, very, very small communities. And so a couple of recently, I'm not quite sure when, but very recently, Hezbollah fighters decided that they wanted to come into the Christian enclave and fire off their weapons into Israel, fire off their rockets into Israel, because they knew that Israel would then target the Christian enclave. Well, some Christians, local civilians, saw this happening and said, "Excuse me? No, you're not going to do that. Go take your weapons to your community, to your Shia village. Don't come to our village. We do not want you." And so there is a history, a very long history of Lebanese Christians over the last 50 years. They are fierce warriors. They are. And they, even though their numbers are small, guys, they absolutely will defend their land, their territory, their ancestral home. They will lose their life in order to do that. And so it's very brave on them for sure. They're outnumbered. They, in essence, are swimming in the sea of Hezbollah. But yet they will protect their village with everything they have. And so various fighters, Hezbollah fighters, have, since this conflict started, tried to use these various Christian enclaves in order to fire off their rockets. In some cases they have. In other cases, the local community turns around and says, "No, you're not going to do that here in my community. Take your rockets somewhere else." The other thing also to keep in mind, quickly to keep in mind is that, when Israel was in occupation of South Lebanon, pretty much all the way, if you look at a map of Lebanon, all the way to Jenin, right? All the way to Jenin, was all occupied by Israel. It was all under Israeli occupation. So Israel knows every inch of this land. It knows where the Shia villages are. It knows where the Sunni villages are. It knows where the Christian villages are. And historically, Christians, the Lebanese Christians, have had a very good relationship with the Israelis. And they've done trade. There is, strong bond between the two. Just because they both want to live in peace, they want to succeed, they want to have a prosperous region, and so the Israelis know these communities very, very well, and so they have not necessarily targeted Christian communities. They've not, in fact, since October 7th, and obviously the Christians of South Lebanon are very, very grateful for that, but they have to keep a very close eye. They've got to keep watch that if this thing escalates, they could be facing a whole different scenario if that happens. And obviously, many of them are praying that doesn't happen.
We're talking to George Thomas here in southern Lebanon. As we've been talking about, for those of you just joining, I mean, this is a very, very volatile area right now. I mean, we have people in the chat here, George, saying that it looks like the calm before the storm out there. Obviously, you're battling a little bit of wind issues up there. Understand that, so you could give us a good view. So we're thankful that everybody's being patient with that part of it, but I can hear you just fine, George. But that's an incredible tidbit about these Christians there. I think people generally, your mind doesn't go to Christians when you think of places like Lebanon and Syria and areas like that. And so when you think about what they're dealing with and you hear a story like that they are, because that is a classic sort of Hamas tactic, right? Like, let's put all of the missiles into schools and hospitals, and they don't care about those people. When they get shot back, they'll say, look at Israel and how awful they are for shooting at a hospital. So, and we saw that in the headlines play out. So that is clearly a Hamas tactic, and it's incredible to hear these people fighting back, these Christians. So you've been talking to some of these Christians in this area that you're at. What are they saying?
Well, I mean, again, they just bemoan the fact, Dan, that they're having to live like this. Again, they say they've been doing this for the last 50 years, since 1975, and that's a long time to have to live under these conditions. And again, do bear with me. It's a windy day. We've had a lot of fog. We've had a lot of rain. And in fact, I was talking to one person when I made the comment. I said it was a very quiet night. I slept very deeply last night. And he said, yeah, but that's actually not good news either, because it's, again, like one of the viewers said, it's like the calm before the storm again, because they've not had a lot of good, clear skies today. There's been a lot of clouds, a lot of fog covering up a lot of these areas, and it changes. One, as you probably saw from the screen just a few minutes ago, before the sun was shining. Now it's overcast, and you can see the clouds continue to roll in. So it's again, it's that unpredictable nature of the weather here in South Lebanon. It's very lush, very hilly, very green. This is the rainy season as well. That's happening. But again, like the Christians are, they're just sort of as exasperated, guys. I mean, they really are. Dad, they're just like, will this ever end? Will this? Can we just have some peace of mind? This part of South Lebanon, constantly in a state of flux, constantly on the edge, constantly hearing explosions and having to deal with this. But yet, so many of them choose to stay here because this is their ancestral home. They don't want to go, to go anywhere else. Where can they go? And again, who would want to leave this piece of real estate? It's so beautiful in the southern part of Lebanon. Very, very lush, very, very beautiful. And again, it's been a contested area for such a long time. So the reason I've come here is to help people understand that in the middle of this conflict, you have Christians, you have people of faith who don't want war, who want to live in peace with their fellow brethren, who want to live in peace with the Shia Muslims, with the Sunni Muslims. They don't want war. They're not trying to enlarge their territory. They just want to live in peace and harmony. And so that's what they've been asking for. That's what they've been hoping for. But sadly, here we are again, a conflict with Hezbollah and Israel. Just praying that it doesn't escalate into a full-blown war and full-blown war. Many people have said, "Listen, what does the conflict with Hamas and Israel have to do with us? We are another country. Leave us alone." That's a sentiment I keep hearing, especially amongst the Christians. Leave us alone. This is between Israel and Hamas. Lebanon has got nothing to do with this. This does not involve us. And that's why you had this top patriarch of the Maronite Church pose this question to Hezbollah and to the leaders of the Shia Muslim community. You didn't ask us. You are bringing us into a war that we did not ask for. We want peace. We want peace within our territory. We want peace with Israel. Don't take us into this conflict. It would be hell. It would be difficult. Don't you remember what happened in 2006? Don't you remember what happened in the 80s, in 1975? Do we want the same thing again? Obviously, the Christians are saying, no, we don't want this. And so this is the predicament that the Christians of South Lebanon find themselves in.
All right, CBN's George Thomas is with us. People keep coming into this chat, George, so if you can hang out for a few minutes longer, that'd be great.
Yeah,
so people keep coming in, and I wanted to recognize some of the folks here. I asked them where everyone's watching from. We've got someone from Brazil. We got another watching in Uganda. We got John in East Central Iowa. Diane's with us. There's so many that are joining in and watching your report here. And we have George Thomas, who is in, if you're just joining us, southern Lebanon, just outside of Israel. Israel is just off in the distance there. And you're 100% right, George. I've been to Golan Heights, where you get the overlook and you can kind of see into Lebanon from there and into Syria. And it's spectacular countryside. It really is. And so it's just really sad that it's caught up with all of this instability and with this war. But I guess we shouldn't be surprised as Christians, knowing the history of Israel and knowing God's connection to Israel, of course. And so when it looks irrational, like, why are all these countries so obsessed and all these people obsessed with trying to get rid of Israel? It certainly, then you start to go, oh, wait a minute. I've read about this and now I kind of understand. And you think maybe there's obviously something bigger at play going on here.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. And this is, we're talking about historical battles, right, that have been going on for a very, very long time, and the various players in the region. And obviously, today you've got, significant players who are creating this sort of destabilizing environment. And many of the folks here will point to the singular country that is the leaders of Iran, of the Islamic regime in Iran. And everything, one person said to me the other day, he said to me that Iran wants to turn Lebanon into a completely Muslim country. Iran wants to, in essence, control Lebanon and put its thumbprint, its fingerprint on Lebanon, and in the process get rid of all the Christians. You can see the influence, the huge influence that Iran's tentacles are here in Lebanon. And so there's this battle between different countries, right? So you've got Sunni Muslims. If you don't know this, but Islam is broken up basically into two major, if I can use the term, denominations, right? So you've got the Shia Muslims, and then you've got the Sunni Muslims. So Iran is the largest Shia country, and you have Saudi Arabia, which is predominantly Sunni. You've got other Gulf countries that are predominantly Sunni. So there's this internal battle within Islam from a political and a religious perspective, and then you see that playing out in a country like Lebanon. What's interesting is that there's a very, very warm relationship between Sunni Muslims in Lebanon and the Christians of Lebanon, right? So they have a warm relationship, and in fact, the Sunni Muslims don't like their country to be turned into a Shia republic, into an Islamic republic controlled and ruled by Iran. So you've got Iran, its tentacles in the West Bank. You've got Iran's tentacles in the Gaza Strip. You've got Iran's tentacles here in the southern part of the country of Lebanon. So again, the puppets of those who are pulling the strings from Tehran, the Islamic mullahs of the regime, has its tentacles here, and they are trying to, again, more destabilization in the region, either to push the Americans off, to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. Again, so you see the geopolitical dynamics that are at play today, and Israel realizes that Iran is an existential threat to its existence, to its nation, and is doing everything to try and eliminate that threat in the form of Hamas, and then obviously the various Islamic jihadist groups that are operating in the West Bank, and then here in South Lebanon, in the northern part of Israel, trying to deal with Hezbollah and the challenges that it poses. Now, keep in mind, if you were to look at the sort of military strength of Hamas and Hezbollah, most experts would say that Hezbollah is so much more powerful, so much more stronger than Hamas, and obviously any kind of engagement in a very escalated fashion would be very, very it would be dramatic, to say the least, if a full-out war were to happen. Obviously, we've seen in the last several weeks rather, that Israel has been pushing more troops to the north, the northern part of Israel. They've evacuated. I've been there just a couple of months ago. I was in, I'm just going to let you hear the church bells of South Lebanon. Let me stop for a second. Not sure if you can hear that, guys.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Yep. Those are the church bells of South Lebanon. Beautiful churches here in South Lebanon. Tonight, I'm going to get a chance to go and be with the church members here to film there, do an interview. But again, and what's interesting is as you drive, just a side note here, as you drive from Beirut, make your way down to South Lebanon, what the Christians have done over the many, many years, especially during Easter. Easter is coming up, guys, right? It's a huge, huge celebration. Can you hear that?
Yeah,
Can you hear the bell?
absolutely.
Okay. I was not quite sure if the wind noise was overwhelming the bell sound. But what's interesting is that as you make that beautiful drive from Beirut all the way to these Christian enclaves, there are these beautiful hills that surround the southern part of Lebanon. And what Christians have done is that almost every year they erect this huge cross at the very tip of these hills. Again, in essence, just saying, look, this is our land. This is our homeland, and in essence, planting a cross, right? Planting the Christian cross to say this is our roots. This is where we come from. And it was absolutely beautiful to see as the clouds were rolling in, the storms were rolling in last night. But again, coming back to this point about Iran and the influence that Iran has today in the region and in this country. Many people here, they do not want to be controlled by Iran. They don't want this form of Islamic governance. And this is what the Sunni Muslims, as well as the Christians, and I would dare say some within the Shia community, who don't want Lebanon to turn into what Iran is today, ruled by the Islamic clerics. They don't want that life. And I've been covering Lebanon for quite some time. And this is, again, a very, very forward-thinking, very modern culture. They're very proud about their history and their culture and their religion. Yeah, and they want to keep that. They want to maintain that. And it's a sort of battle that's been going on, guys, for the last 50 years, the sort of battle for the soul of Lebanon. And today, in 2024, that battle still continues.
Awesome. Incredible stuff, George. And I just want to remind everyone, if you enjoy seeing, I mean, this is fantastic information and a live look that George has given, and he's obviously taking a risk here, being in a very dangerous area. So make sure just on your end of the bargain here is just like and subscribe and get that notification bell on. Just watching this stuff helps us, and it helps CBN continue to bring you these sorts of amazing, incredible reports like what George is doing right now. And so everyone was checking in, George, while you were going there. I just want to acknowledge some of these people. You got Paul in Texas, someone from Oregon's checking in, Laura from Arizona, people from Connecticut, Australia, Tennessee, Nebraska, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Doreen there, Alabama checking in. So many people checking in. We're so glad all of you are here. And just want to remind you, first, as I mentioned in the chat, be praying for George and his team out there. Clearly in a hot zone, and you never know what's going to happen right now with everything going on between Hezbollah, as George was just talking about. So, George, I don't want to keep you too long. So if you want to just give us any final thoughts, or if just let me know. I'll let you call the shots here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate the prayers for myself and my team here, Abdullah, my cameraman, and it's not easy to be here. It's extremely dangerous, but yet I felt it was something that I wanted to do and needed to do to give people a different perspective. Obviously, you have been watching our fantastic coverage from my colleague Chris Mitchell and Julie Stahl and John Boggy, our guys from the Jerusalem Bureau doing an amazing job since October 7th. It's been nonstop for them, and you guys have been engaged with what is happening today in Israel with their ongoing war against Hamas. But I wanted to bring you the other side of this conflict, the conflict here in South Lebanon, and give you sort of a sense of what is happening, how people are coping in the midst of war, and especially to focus on the tiny Christian community here in South Lebanon, who are experiencing a very, very difficult time. It's interesting. I just came just a couple of days ago from Ukraine. I was on the front lines in Ukraine, and we'll be doing a story. There's a story that's going to be coming up pretty soon about brave Ukrainian Christians who are, again, like the city of Kherson in Ukraine, the very front line. The church is thriving. In fact, people from other parts of the safer areas of Ukraine are coming to the front line to worship and to meet in the churches under the cover of artillery explosion, of missile attacks from the Russians, and the church is growing. And today, right here on the front lines of the war between Hezbollah, the engagement, I don't know what you call it, these skirmishes between Hezbollah and Israel, the church is here. You can hear.
That's awesome.
You can hear the church bells. Just imagine, the church is probably 3 minutes away from me, guys. Okay? The church 3 minutes away, and just yesterday, day before, there were explosions right here. Right here. Less than 5-minute drive to those church bells. What I'm saying to you is that when there is chaos, when there is calamity, when there is war, when there is famine, when there is desperation, when people are in trouble and they're facing very difficult times, the church is on the front line. What better place to be than right here? That is why the Christians of South Lebanon, they ain't going nowhere. The church bells are going to continue ringing. It's a signal. It's a sound they want to reverberate all across the South Lebanon. You are not getting rid of us. The church is not going to go anywhere. We are going to stay. We're going to continue to preach the good news of Jesus Christ. We will continue to ring those bells to let them know that they're not going anywhere. And so that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm risking, along with my dear friend Abdullah, we've come to South Lebanon to tell these stories so that people around the world, that our viewers will realize that in the midst of challenges, in the midst of this constant battle, the church is here. They're strong. Does it mean that they're not afraid? Of course they are. Does it mean that they are equally not putting their lives on the line? Of course they are. But yet they believe that they have to communicate this good news to bring hope to a community that has felt hopeless. That's what I've seen, whether it's Ukraine, today here in South Lebanon, whether it's in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in China, in other parts of the world where the church and people are suffering. The Church of Jesus Christ, the good news of Jesus Christ, Christians in the middle of warfare and difficult times would come here and risk their lives to tell people about Jesus Christ, to provide food, to provide water, care for their physical needs, tend to those who have been injured in war, and then at the same time, when it's appropriate, give them a hug, give them a kiss, give them food, but then also introduce them to the person of Jesus Christ. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. And that's why we're here, to tell those stories of these brave men and women who decide to stay in the midst of very, very difficult times.
Amen. That is awesome. Fantastic, George. Fantastic stuff, as always. Everyone's praying for you here in the chat. We're getting a lot of that. People were loving hearing the bells go off there in the middle of that. And we even got a couple people telling, after you were saying reminding them you were just in Ukraine and now you're there in southern Lebanon. There are some people encouraging you, George, to get a vacation and let's get a nap in for you here at stateside. But in the meantime, we'll enjoy your great reporting. Stay safe, my brother, and we'll all be praying for you here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, guys.
All right. CBN's George Thomas there in southern Lebanon with an absolutely incredible report. Thank you all so much for being here this morning on this live stream. Like I said, make sure you are liking and subscribing the channel. We've got George out there all in different places of the globe, all these different areas, bringing you incredible reports that you're just not seeing anywhere else, especially as it pertains to the faith, as what George was talking about there at the end. You're just not going to get that anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure you're subscribing. That really helps us. And visit CBN News and follow all of the incredible reporters we have bringing you the news from a Christian perspective. So God bless you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you next time we pop on. God bless.